U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton blamed the murderous attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya, on an American director's short film thought to be ridiculing Mohammed. But how could she blame those murders on an artist working 7,000 plus miles away, instead of on the Muslims who were actually there at the time and who actually pulled the triggers? To blame this American director for the Benghazi murders is wrong for two reasons. First, just like so much else that comes out of the mouth of government, whether it is American government or foreign government, this is most likely a lie, because the prep time for such an attack would have to have been longer than the length of time that the movie had been out. And second, where is this movie director's artistic license? That is to say, whatever happened to American freedom of speech? No one is above criticism or ridicule in our great country, because that is how freedom of speech works. And as long as a person is not saying that it is okay to harm innocent or unarmed people the way that Muhammad does through the Koran, then he or she should be allowed to say whatever he or she wants. Truth always emerges eventually in a society where people are allowed to speak freely. But truth never emerges in a society where people are not allowed to speak freely. The truth is that Muhammad murdered people with his own hands, some of whom had to have been innocent or unarmed, and through his writings teaches his still living followers to do the same, which makes Muhammad the true culprit behind the Benghazi killings and all other murderous Islamic attacks as well. And he is the one who also wrote all of the other horrific passages in the Koran that you and I have been examining in my presentation to you here today. So why does our present American administration say that it is not okay to criticize or to ridicule Muhammad or his writings? U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch blamed the Orlando nightclub killer's murderous rampage on his repressed gayness rather than on his Islamic faith. Even though gays have no handbook telling them to kill people, but Muslims do in fact have a handbook telling them to kill people, which is the Koran, and devout Muslims read its horrific passages every single day. This slight against gays by the Obama administration on behalf of Islam further demonstrates this administration's sympathy toward Islam. For although the Koran is hopelessly vague when it comes to the subject of homosexuality, the customary Islamic response to gays, in fact to the entire LGBT community, is to repress, persecute, and sometimes even to kill them, conventionally by throwing them off of rooftops, although how they came up with such a bizarre form of execution, I have no idea. Attorney General Lynch even went so far as to try to expunge the Orlando nightclub killer's own admissions to his Islamic faith from the publicly released taped 9/11 calls from his attack, which expunging is a form of censorship, just so Americans will never find out the ugly truth about Islam, that its foundational text, the Koran, is filled with repeated calls for murder, sadism, terrorism, and world conquest. Why would our American administration do this? Whom are they trying to protect? Mohammed? Shame, shame, shame on the United States of America for protecting and thereby condoning this false prophet, this panderer to indolent thugs and self-righteous haters of good people, this loveless, thoughtless, base, and violent man Muhammad and his horrifically evil writings. I am not saying this because I am a Republican trying to fault a Democratic administration, for I belong to neither of those two American political parties, being frankly disgusted by both of them for their equal lack of love and their equal lack of truth. Rather, I am saying only that on this particular issue, this particular American administration has missed the boat. Our popular American culture criticizes or ridicules Jesus or Moses or sometimes even Buddha or Krishna all the time, and our government doesn't say boo about that. So our leaders are clearly playing favorites. They want us to convert to Islam. But the word Islam means submission, and submission has nothing to do with American freedom. Just look at even the mainstream Islamic form of worship. Men separated from women, all wearing uniform robes and lined up straight and bowing in unison, while they perfunctorily parrot the same ritualistic sayings over and over again by rote, not even expressing their own personal need, like dumb ducks all swimming in a line and quacking the same ridiculous nonsense. How is that form of worship compatible with American freedom? Freedom, and especially freedom of expression, is the sacred American principle that more than any other has enabled our country to excel above all the other countries of the world in happiness, knowledge, and even prosperity. And if we do not keep freedom sacred, surely we will retrograde to the level of other, more backward and more deprived countries. Perhaps even as far backward and as much deprived as Islamic countries, with their characteristic personal, technological, and outside of oil wealth, which won't last, economic failure. Islam stifles free thinking, but free thinking is exactly what a nation needs to keep economic pace with the ever-changing world. Our country used to stand for freedom, as well as for equality, justice, and democracy. At least these are the buzzwords that are printed or imprinted all over our monetary currency, even if historically our country as a whole has not always lived up to them. But by our accepting the Koran, we prove that we no longer stand for any of these values, because the Koran, every chapter, page, paragraph, sentence, and word of it, is anti-freedom, anti-equality, anti-justice, and anti-democracy. It is our American false sense of political correctness that makes us want to accept Islam, but the truth is that it is our core American values of freedom, equality, justice, and democracy, which, if we are willing to share them with other countries, actually do make the world a better place, while Islam clearly makes the world a worse place. So it is our core American values that are the true political correctness. These core American values are the exact same values that have been engendered by all religion that teaches that God is love, whenever and wherever that religion has been manifested in all the history of the world. Because what love is in the spiritual realm equals what freedom is in the political realm. Because love demands the freedom it needs to fulfill its own higher purposes, that is, to follow its own heart-enriching commands rather than the heart-stultifying commands of mere man's government. And because freedom loves whomever or whatever it is that it is set free. This is exactly why all despotic government, such as all Islamic government, makes a point of repressing all love-based religion, because government understands intuitively that love inspires people to demand their own personal, hence political, freedom. Perhaps in some future time, Islam will spawn a whole new love-based religion, one that is kinder and gentler than Islam, the way that Judaism spawned kinder and gentler, love-based Christianity. Not necessarily the church, but certainly the teachings of Jesus. And yes, historically there has been a difference. Or the way that Hinduism spawned kinder and gentler, love-based Buddhism. And I pray for our good-hearted Islamic brothers and sisters to begin laying the foundation for such a new religion. But in the meantime, we must acknowledge those many world religions based on the beautiful teaching that God is love, the religions that, through that love, do advocate universal human brotherhood and world peace, and we must form a pan-religious and international bond of goodwill with those religions and their associated countries, and include all of the world's independently acting ambassadors for love, whether they be Good Samaritans in the Christian tradition, or Bodhisattvas in the Buddhist tradition, or any other type of kind-hearted people in any other type of religious tradition, or even those kind-hearted people who have no religion at all, and include as well all self-professing Muslims who are willing to renounce the murderous, sadistic, terroristic, and world-conquering passages in the Koran. Sure, we all prefer our own religions or our own cultures, but if there is only one God, then God has to be higher than any one single religious or cultural strain, and must love equally all persons who act as conduits for God's love. This is what St. John meant when he wrote that everyone who loves knows God and is born of God. And the parable of the Good Samaritan teaches us that it is precisely the person who is not of our own religion, or not even of our own country, who is our neighbor and whom we should care for. If those people who hung up that giant banner in Lubbock, Texas, that said love to all in Arabic were sincere, then they are our brothers or sisters, because everyone who truly knows God knows that God, as Spirit, is love, a unifier of races and cultures. But on the other hand, we must also acknowledge that there is one world religion that is based on the horrific teaching that God advocates murder, sadism, terrorism, and world conquest, and we must denounce that religion as such. By all the rest of the religious world uniting to denounce the horrific passages in the Koran, the secular world will come to understand that those passages have nothing to do with the true God of love. But if we do not publicly condemn the horrific passages in the Koran, then when Muslims murder innocent and unarmed people in obedience to those horrific Quranic passages, we ourselves become a party to it. In the eyes of the true God in heaven, it is as if we ourselves were committing those murders. Thank you for listening.